Catch up on the latest music news, social issues, exclusive interviews, album reviews, also featuring entrepreneurs doing big things, all on musiclifesocial.com. We do this for the people to empower the people. This is musiclifesocial.com, and I am one of your hosts, Radio Raheem, Big Heem, as you may know me. My partner, I let him introduce himself.
You know what it is, the General Mail Salute. Signature Styles, double S all the way, Music Life Social. What it do?
We have a special treat for you guys today, all the way from the West Coast. Legendary DJ Jam is in the building. Yo, what's up, fam? Thanks for joining us.
DJ Jam, West Side or Rider?
Yes, sir. What's good? Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. First, just give a little brief background about yourself, man, for the people who don't know
the world
who you
now.
be. Yeah,
just tell me, legendary DJ.
Let's see. I could be here for a minute, but I'm a kid that was born in Maryland. Moved to San Diego through my youngest years. Moved to Texas for another stretch, and then back to San Diego. Later on, moved to Los Angeles for school, where I met Snoop and Dre, and the rest was history. From that, DJing for some of the biggest groups, not only them, but all of their groups, Warren G to the 213 crew, the NWA, to the East Siders, as well as Snoop's group, the Doggy's Angels, the first female group that he signed.
I remember them.
So, I was just blessed, man, to be able to hold it down for all these guys. I would have been cool for just one of them, you know what I mean?
Right.
But the stars lined up, and I held it down for like 8 to 10 top groups, you know what I mean?
Right.
Cool.
Gold and platinum, all of them. So, just blessed, man. And from that, I learned as much as the game and as I could. And now I fly around and tour the world, DJing top clubs, concerts, and festivals because of the things that I've done. And also being on having a syndicated radio show called The Hot Spot that airs on stations here in the U.S. as well as Australia, as well as the iHeartRadio app. About to take my talents to the Twitch network, where I have 3 other shows besides the Hot Spot, which is like my club mix show. But I have, of course, I'm the one who bought out the W Balls project, where Snoop hosted my first project, W Balls. So that's going to be a show I'm bringing to Twitch. I have another show called Midnight Grooves. That was one of the first shows to exhibit R&B and sexual hip hop.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
That sounds.
I was the first to bring that to radio as a mix show. It was called Midnight Grooves. And the station 92.3 The Beat in Los Angeles believed in me when I came to them with that idea. They let me do it. It went #1 the first book.
Okay.
So Midnight Grooves has been a brand ever since. Then because I've been able to tour with Snoop all over the world and frequent different clubs, because basically over in Europe, when our concerts are over, Snoop still wants to party. So the only basically clubs that'll still be open are the house clubs, right? So it don't matter. Everybody knows Snoop. Snoop just wants to go have a good time. So we go to the house clubs, and first thing I do is go straight to the DJ booth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I do. So seeing DJ after DJ and getting in tune with house music, with EDM music, years ago, before it was even big in the United States.
Yeah.
I started playing at these clubs just from the DJs wanting me to just get on. Hey, Jam, you want to get on for a minute? You know what I mean? And I'm just like, just feed me the records. You know what I mean? Okay. And I would be cutting and scratching the records and house music.
Right.
And then it would trip the whole club out. You know what I mean? The beat, first of all, like, Jam, that music? And then, oh, shoot, what are you doing? Our DJs don't do that. So now, when we weren't on tour, when I go back home, these clubs want me to come back out and to DJ, right?
Right.
So I've been doing that for years. So that's another one of my brands called Sin City. So yeah, man, that kind of sums up me, as a DJ from beginning to now. You know what I mean?
It's a lot, but let's kind of jump into it, man. I mean, you played a vital role in helping curate West Coast hip hop or whatnot. When and why did you see a need to fill that void in the late 80s or whatnot? What made you want to jump in and be like, you know what, there's something missing. Our music is missing on the radio or whatnot.
Okay. So back in the day, I was a big DJ from where I'm from in San Diego. But I was a student of Dr. Dre's way before really the big blow up, because he was doing these mixtapes, right? And I was a mixtape DJ just starting to do mixtapes too, but he had been doing them. But that's where he brought out Ice Cube, the whole crew, you know what I mean? Ren, Eazy-E, it was on these mixtapes. So he would, most of all the music was coming from New York back then, right? So Dre got all this music, because he was a DJ. He would get all this music and he would make mixtapes and have all the top East Coast records on there. But he would throw his West Coast NWA, Eazy-E records on there too. And then have them rhyme at the beginning of the tape. You know what I mean? Freestyle at the beginning and, a side one, and at the beginning of side two of the cassette. And that's how people knew who Ice Cube and who was NWA and all these people, because of his mixtapes. And he did a master mix at the beginning of these mixtapes, right?
Right.
And nobody was doing any master mixes and putting artists on these mixtapes or whatever. So I was a student of that. So I started doing that in San Diego. So I was seeing the importance of, man, we need more West Coast representation, because now we got groups that are putting out, dope songs too, right? Right. So we were like the ones that were putting it out there on the West Coast. It was Dre. And then I came right behind him as a student doing the same thing, but using artists in San Diego, my MCs. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Skip years, a few years later, they started selling my mixtapes with Dr. Dre's in the exclusive place. You can only get it in one spot in LA. And they started selling mine with his. And we didn't even know each other, you know what I mean, back then. It's just so crazy how things work out full circle. You come back around, and I ended up being his DJ. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Him and I was studying him all this time, and you know what I mean?
Right.
So, like I said, I've been in this situation. I've been blessed, and stars aligned. You know what I mean? And here I am.
Word.
Okay.
Nice. So you started off in Maryland, though, right? You said you was in Maryland originally, growing up.
Yeah, I was born in Maryland, but at an early age. You know what I mean? My father was stationed there in the military.
Okay.
So my mother and my father's families were in San Diego at the time. So when he, was time to leave Maryland, we went back to San Diego.
Okay.
But I was born in Maryland. I was born. So yeah, back to San Diego growing up, and then around 5th grade, I moved to Texas, Dallas, Texas. And I had, we had family there in Dallas as well as Houston. My cousin Johnny Nash, the singer, I can see clearly now. He's Houston, so that's all our Nash family. You know what I mean? So summertime, I would go to Johnny's house. You know what I mean? And chill with him like in summertime, and see him having a recording studio inside of his house. You know what I mean? As a little kid, and all this stuff stuck with me. You know what I mean? And that's crazy how I became who I am, but that's what I grew up on because it was in me,
So, I mean, DJing is like one of the 4 elements of hip hop music or whatnot. And you've been in the game for a minute. How has DJing evolved from when you started to up until now? Because I know you've seen the evolution of DJing and everything, with carrying the crates and everything all the way up to the digital
Right.
method
Yeah,
and things like that. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And and I don't know if you still do vinyl now. I don't know if you still do the vinyl now. I mean, because some DJs are, you got some purists that still, every now and again they'll bring out the vinyl or whatnot.
Some spots have vinyl night where it's DJs on vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
I like vinyl DJs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, I've seen the evolution of DJs from the beginning to what it is now. You know what I mean? Even from the people that were responsible, the person who was responsible for giving me into DJing, because he was a big DJ on the East Coast. He was from Jersey.
Okay.
So that's how I learned, because he was in the military with my brother-in-law, and he got out of the military and then came to San Diego to stay for a whole summertime and bought his 2 turntables, a mixer, and 2 crates of records, and staying at my sister's house, with my brother-in-law. So I would ride my bike all the way across town just to watch him practice behind the turntables. You know what I mean? Back then, I used to ride and race BMX bikes.
Word.
Like factory.
Right.
I raced for a factory. They used to fly me around the country.
Real,
you know what I mean?
Real racing.
Yeah, man. A lot of people don't know that, man. I've done a lot, man, in my life that you wouldn't even realize. You know what I mean?
Right.
I could sit here all day and tell you stuff, and you wouldn't believe it. You think I'm lying at the end of all these stories. You know what I mean? No way in the world one person could have done as much as you've done. You know
Tony,
but that's me. But yeah, I used to BMX race, and play the drums and different instruments. But as soon as he moved to San Diego and I went to ride my bike across town to watch him, by the end of the summer, basically I was getting out of everything else, and I went into DJing and stopped bike racing, and you know what I mean? I quit bike racing and quit playing the drums because I ended up getting a drum machine, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's how it happened for me, and it was all about crates of records and timing my vinyl and arranging it in my crate so that, at the beginning of the crate, it was the slower one, and at the back was the fastest one. You know what I mean? So I already knew what would mix with what.
Nice.
And that stuck with me my whole career. The first thing I would do when I get a record is time the beats per minute.
Right. Before
I even anything else, that's the first thing, and mark it and put it where it's supposed to be. Then I sat and, you know what I mean?
Right.
Did my thing.
Right.
So I really appreciate the whole, lugging the crates of records that, I paid dues, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then dealing with all the things that, the technical aspects of a turntable, how your needles can break, how the needles, can skip if they're dusty, you know what I mean? Right. How to fix the phone arm that's loose, you know what I mean? Because you're playing like, you know what I mean? Sticking a piece of tissue balling up so that things will work.
Right.
So in doing that all around the world, you know what I mean? I'm lugging crates with Snoop and Dre all over the world. You know
right.
I mean? So when the technology started coming out and the CDJs with the CD players, I kind of felt some kind of way. You know what I mean, about it, because a lot of times those DJs just came in at that level.
Right.
So they didn't care. They never carried any crates of records. They were just carrying a little CD. You know what I mean?
Right.
In the CD little case. And I'm just like, oh wow. But after a while, once they started developing the technology even more and more and making it close to feeling like a DJ playing vinyl, if you can say, you know what I mean, over the years, perfecting it to what it is now. Now I embrace it because, I'm older. I'm not trying to carry all them crates around.
Right. I know that's right.
Do all that. But
end up having back problems or something.
You know what I mean? But now I'm able to do some things in the mix that I could have never done.
Right. You almost make the beat while you mix it, whatever.
Yeah. So if you listen to my radio shows, if you click on one of my mixes, you'll understand.
Right.
I'm doing something that you can't do with 2 turntables in the mixer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I play somewhere live, okay, that's when you'll see my live performance. But when you hear me on the radio or whatever, that's big time produced.
Right.
I'm dropping acapellas out, flipping beats, all kinds. You know what I mean?
Yes, real DJ, the real DJ.
if somebody recorded themselves just from beginning to end, and they recorded themselves for 2 hours, like a lot of DJs do, that pre-record, they'll like press play, record, and for 2 hours they get in the mix, or whatever. They break it up maybe into 30-minute segments or whatever. But what takes a DJ 2 hours to do takes me 10 hours producing.
Because you're producing,
you know what I mean?
You're producing your mix. You're producing.
I'm tracking.
Yes.
I'm tracking the mix in Pro Tools.
Right.
Okay.
I'm creating a picture like Michelangelo.
Taking these pieces and putting it back together.
Yes.
Okay.
So that when you hit play, from the beginning to end, I'm taking you on a journey.
I feel you.
That you can't do with 2 turntables in a mixer.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that comes from me. And that comes from me doing that, creating those mixtapes with those master mixes and putting artists at the beginning of those mixes that made me and Dre's mixtape stick out from everybody else's. But that's
man, how were those sessions, man? With Snoop and Dre, those first sessions when you all got together or whatnot, man. I mean, was it
magic?
I mean,
magic.
Okay.
Magic. Energy. Goosebumps. That's when you know it's real.
Word.
Okay.
Whenever you get goosebumps, what happens when you go to church and the choir sings and they getting it in? What happens? And you feel that?
The Holy Ghost. yeah, you start feeling it. Yeah.
Goosebumps come up, right?
Right.
That kind of stuff.
That's what's up.
Okay.
One after another song after another.
Okay.
Because of what they were going through. You got to think what Snoop was going through as a person back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to think about what Dre was going through as a person. You know what I mean? He had broke up with Death Row, all these lawsuits, breaking up with Easy. You know what I mean? Can you picture where his mindset was? These dudes that are out there ain't got nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's when your best work comes out.
That's true.
There's never been another Doggy Style.
Never.
That's true.
Chronic.
That's true. That's
Chronic. Chronic Part 1.
Man, that's why I was.
You know what I mean? The first Chronic. You can't duplicate that.
I mean, can you define? I mean, because I lived in Inglewood, California, in the 80s or whatnot.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I moved in like 91 or whatever.
Right when it was going down. Right.
Right. You know, so West 64th Street, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Okay. In your opinion, what's your definition of the West Coast sound?
I wouldn't put that just on one, but maybe I can kind of. The definition I would think of West Coast hip hop is a struggle. Period.
Okay.
Listen to the most hip hop backpack artists from the West back then. You know what I mean, and what they were talking about. You know what I mean. Even if it was on the hip hop, but you heard what they were going through. You know what I mean. Then you heard Ice Cube, the best, if not the best, West Coast storyteller.
Right.
Ice Cube was great at painting a picture, man. You didn't have to live in the hood. After you listen to an Ice Cube album, you got that picture. You know what I mean?
Right.
So even hip hop groups, that came from the West, Los Angeles, Jurassic Fives.
Right.
It's listen, Far Side, listening to what they're talking about, the lyrical content. You know what I mean? Like it's
King T from back in the day.
I used to listen to King T. Man, the best people painting pictures and storytellers. King T, all these cats, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead. I know you got questions.
So right now, like we were just talking the other day about how, music goes from state to state and this area to that area. For one, where did you see your side of of the coast being in the setting. So like we were basically talking about, Atlanta how they run for a good 20 years. New York had they run, Atlanta had they run,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed like it's transitioning now. It's a lot of Detroit, a lot of Memphis stuff going on. And,
Yeah.
like I always say, I'm from New York, so I always say like Cali is a place where, or the West Coast, it's really like a place where you don't never have to leave the coast to be really substantial in the vibe, and you know what I mean. I'm asking kind of two questions in one. But where do you see the West Coast now, as far as they position in the vibe in the next couple of years coming up? You know what I mean? Basically, I'm just trying to say, where do you see the next couple of few years of the West Coast artists and people in the involvement that you got? You're doing the radio, you got something in Australia, iHeartRadio. It's a big influence, the West Coast in general, with music, really worldwide. People don't even realize how many West Coast artists they are. They just hear the music. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So where do you
Yeah.
see, like,
Yeah.
you know, the next few years as far as the West Coast, and do you feel like them next 20, because the West Coast had to run for a
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
run,
Yeah.
and that's why I be
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
artists they are. When you start to break it down, you be like, oh, you just people just like
Yeah.
after a while they don't really narrow it down. But where do you see the
Yeah. There's a lot of branches of the West Coast now. I think the West Coast is, they went through a rebuilding stage, I would say, and where only certain type of artists were coming through the cracks.
right?
Like when I say certain kind of artists, I'm talking about your Kendrick
Right.
Lamars. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like
So that whole West being hard kind of stuff fell to the wayside. Things went to the South, and boom, you know what I mean? And up and down the mid, from the South on up, going upwards is booming, and they've been running. Man, they've had, I think, the longest run out of anybody. You know what I mean?
right.
And they still cracking.
Yeah.
The West Coast, though, since that Kendrick Lamar lyrical era came back in, right? And especially because of spearheaded by Kendrick, because when Kendrick came out, I think the West Coast started getting their props again lyrically. You know what I mean? That didn't have anything to do with being hard as a gangster.
Right.
You couldn't deny it. It was straight lyrics, boom. You know what I mean? I don't care if you're the straight underground hip hop to the commercial hip hop person. You had respected that. You respected that. So what that did was brought another group of type of MCs, you know what I mean? Were born coming up now. Not only that, what was happening, but the G's that had a set a foot on the original, basically West Coast, your Snoop Doggs, your Cubes, your E40s, you know what I mean? You see now they're coming back around now, and because of especially because of the Mount Westmore project, where you have Snoop, Cube, E40, and Too Short, which is bringing Southern California with the Northern California again, and getting them to realize things, not just looking at it as themselves as individuals, but looking at themselves as a conglomerate. You know what I mean? The West Coast conglomerate.
Right.
Now that with these new ones coming up, they're all coming together, and it's all coming back now. You know what I mean? Kind of rising to the top. So now you're going to start hearing more of those artists on radio. You know what I mean? As well as the ones that you hear now. So yeah, I think it's in that in the stage where their bubble is coming back.
Okay.
And but I don't think the South is going anywhere.
Let's go back for a second. During the so-called East Coast, West Coast bullshit or whatever, you were there in the middle, in center stage.
Yeah.
Seen it all. What was the temperature like on the West Coast? What was the temperature like with you being around Snoop and Dre? I mean, was it really beef, or was it just propaganda? In your opinion, was it just propaganda by the media, and it was more than really than what it really was. I mean, it wasn't really what it was and how the media was portraying it to be.
Yeah, man. Like, you know, if you listen to, you know, Dre's first stuff and what he was doing, like you can hear it in his music that, as well as his mixtapes, that he gave it up to the East Coast. You know what I mean? He used a lot of East Coast song samples in his West Coast music. Nobody had anything to say against the East Coast. It wasn't even like that. What happened, to me, it was more media. You know what I mean? Of what they were pumping up in the media, you know, or they would say something that the East Coast was saying, and then the people on the West Coast would hear it. So then they would lash out. And they weren't even the ones that were directly involved with whatever. They were just people from the West Coast. And they were just people from the East Coast that were, you know, East Coast people and West Coast people. You know what I mean? But when you had two people rhyming and, you know, that kind of brought all that to the forefront, right? Then you have people in organizations with egos, right?
Right.
Have something to prove, da-da-da-da-da. So I think a combination of all that, but I think the media and people's homeboys, you know what I mean, and homegirls that didn't know better. Because if you would have stuck all of them in a room somewhere in a recording studio and broke out some blunts and put them in the air, none of that would have happened.
I honestly believe that too. I truly believe that.
But like you said, it was a big point because, you know, back in the days when Cass was having, like you said, mixtapes and mixes, the hard joints was when they was throwing up Cali Ice Cube sample like in the middle of the joint that did like that Biggie had did when them samples was coming. It was all West Coast joint that was being played. That was like fire. Like to hear him, you know, they used to the New York vibe, whatever, but to hear the West Coast samples and, you know, like Jacket for Beats, we love that track. You know, that was Ice Jacket for Beats, and that was all, you know, Jacket for Beats. So it wasn't like you said.
And then you see what happened when they put me with Biggie, and I produced the Rose to the Riches, Real Niggas
That's
Do
one
Real
of
Things.
the most epic,
you know what I mean? In
joint.
the studio, I asked him, and this was before all that beat.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We were in the studio. I asked him. I said, "Man," I said, "What's up?" I said, "Are you cool with West Coast beats? You know, rhyming over West Coast beats." Straight up, he's like, "Man, I love the West Coast, man. They got fired."
Yeah.
That told me right then.
It wasn't like
you know
that.
what I mean? It wasn't about West Coast rappers and we don't hate like you and none of that, man. Cats loved what each other was doing. You know
that was one of the hardest mixes, man, that I've heard, man. I mean, what made you even think about putting that beat on or putting that together for him, man? I mean, just like
remember when I was just telling you about what Dre used to do on his mixtapes?
Yeah.
Listen to the Biggie Project, listen to a Dre or one of my old mixtapes, and you'll understand. That's why. That's where it came from. No, people weren't doing that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They heard reps from Arista, Bad Boy, heard my mixtapes. They heard my master mixes. They heard me putting artists on there. You know what I mean? They're like, Jam, can you do something like this? We got an artist. Nobody had never done a mixtape like this for an artist. Mixtapes were out there, but not one foreign artist. Those were called snippet tapes, where they would put a few songs off the album and they would let them play for 10 seconds and fade it out.
Right.
It'd be like 15 minutes.
They didn't have no skits. They didn't have skits. They didn't have the artists. They didn't have the artists rhyming over beats. None of that.
Right.
I did the first one, but I got it from the concept of how we did mixtapes.
Okay.
And that's what they want to do. Jam, can you put together something? And I put together the whole skits and how I wanted and how I broke up the 3 verses.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You know what? You know what?
And because...
No, go ahead.
And because the fact of how I even created the project and how I separated the 3 verses and had them as skits individually throughout the tape. It wasn't a song together like that, 1 to 3 verses all together, right?
Right.
But what did that do by me doing that? Because I did that, that became one of the most bootlegged
hip hop. Tell you.
in
That's what I was
history.
telling him. Like,
When
yo,
me and
dog,
when me and
that
Snoop
joint is one of
when
the
me and
most
Snoop would tour,
epic Biggie joints. Period. Period.
yeah. When check this out, and I didn't even know this at the time until me and Snoop were traveling the world, right?
Okay.
Snoop, we would go to like record shops. Snoop likes to, collect classic oldies and all that, right? And I would out there collect too. So we would go to these record shops, man, around the world. We would go to record shops, and they would have different versions that people pressed up because they took the three verses and put them
Right.
together and pressed it up. I got a stack probably about like this.
Different
You know what I
people
mean?
doing different.
Because they gave them to me. Once we went in the store, they were like, "Oh, you got this," and I'm like, "Oh, wow, nah, I ain't seen this one." You know what I mean?
Right.
So I got so I just collected them from all over the world. I got all of them. You know what I
That's
mean?
crazy.
But it's been like they say, the most bootleg hip hop song. Like
That's crazy. What I was going to say earlier
Yeah,
was
man,
like,
that's one of the
I grew up in New York, and I grew up with the mixtapes. It's mixtape status. But like you were saying, it was different. We didn't really have skits on the mixtape like that. I mean, it did
right,
maybe an intro to the
right,
song, but not like just skit. Like that's why
right,
when I heard Dre, and it was funny because my cousin's cousin that was in the military in Cali bought that Dr. Dre the Chronic. Like I heard it on the tape, like before it dropped, for real, and it was so
right.
crazy to me. Like that what's the pyramid joint when they
Yes,
did the pyramid, and like the skits made it so
yeah,
like on
yeah,
another
yeah,
level for us to
yeah.
be
It
hearing in
tells
New
a
York.
story. It
It was
tells a
crazy,
story. You
B.
know
And
what I
when you
mean?
said that's really a fact. When you like the skits was a different vibe. The way
Yeah,
mixtapes was done up top, and the
yeah,
way mixtapes, I guess they was doing it in Cali or whatever. But it wasn't skits like that. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
That is a major difference. And when now you
yeah.
say that, the main part I remember from is like, would you get this big head bitch something with the big come in here, something. That's the main part that you
Yeah,
really remember. You know the lyrics because
yeah,
I'm a lyricist, but
yeah,
that skit has made it
yeah.
very memorable. You know what I mean?
Dre,
That's
hey,
epic.
Dre is a skit master. Dre is
man.
a skit
Crazy.
master.
You've been on the radio, man, for a minute, and between San Diego and LA. Do you see yourself as an ambassador? Like, a people got to pass through you. Up and comers, they gotta come through. They gotta come through you. You know what I'm saying? Because you're the man. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You help put West Coast hip hop, you know what I'm saying,
It's your
on the
position.
map.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
been
saying?
big.
And you've been on the radio for a minute, you know what I'm saying, in Southern California or whatnot. Because remember, I think the beef back in the '90s was that why isn't West Coast artists getting played on radio and on the East Coast or
Right.
what?
Yeah. And that, and,
So,
that and I'm glad you mentioned that
mhm,
because going back to the East Coast, West Coast beef, I'm glad you mentioned that
mhm,
because when the beef was going on, one of the reasons why a lot of the West Coast artists felt the way they felt,
mhm.
and and I'm glad you asked that because I didn't want to leave that out. Amongst all the chitter chatter back and forth, there was egos, right?
Right.
Now, when those West Coast artists would travel to the East Coast to do interviews and this and that, they would hear the radio,
Right.
Mhm.
right? And they wouldn't hear any West Coast stuff played, straight New York, da 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 da. But when the East Coast artists would come to LA, right,
Mhm.
their music would just be banging. You know what I mean? Like, like, like they lived out there. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
If you didn't know.
Right.
So, even getting played more than some of the West Coast artist songs were, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
amongst all the back and forth, they felt some kind of way about, well, dang, y'all don't respect us.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Even to where how Suge was.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That, some people could be like, Suge, he's this, he's trying to strong arm, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And give him a bad rap. But I can say this. If Suge wasn't the way he was,
a lot of things.
There might not have been
a lot of things
album.
probably wouldn't even have went down.
Wow.
Maybe not. Because some of those same people that were feeling some kind of way were running those record labels too. Believe that. They weren't being run by West Coast people that grew up in LA and da-da-da-da-da. That was signing them checks, right?
Right.
Well, now it's, okay, wait a minute. We're going up in the labels talking about, hey, we got this group. And y'all are like, oh, next. And y'all are signing all these East Coast groups, which are ending up on our radio. So that had something to do with stemming that energy when it came to the, you know what I mean, the going back and forth. So forgot about that one.
Okay.
From a radio DJ point of view, I really understood that because I was the one getting all these records.
Right.
You know what I mean? The ones from the record labels, like, oh, this is the single we're going after.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And weren't bringing those ones, West Coast songs, to me, saying this is what we're going after. I worked at 92.3. The labels had to go through me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I was one of the ones that they had to meet with me and the music director in the office every week, every Monday.
So
every single major label and some independents, I would have to take a meeting with every single last one of them every single Monday. And they would do their best pitch.
So they had to get your approval.
Yes. They would do their best pitch on why we should be playing their song.
Wow.
That they're trying to add
to the,
you know what I mean? I was in the inside, but I was a DJ. I came from the outside, but now I'm on the inside learning the politics. Right? But I didn't care about the politics when they first hired me at the station. I was wet behind the ears. I was just a dope DJ. That knew music, right?
Right.
So when I came to the station, I didn't understand, a label going after a certain single or pushing a certain single. I went to the people that ran the station, the program director and music director, like, hey, we need to be playing this song right here. And this one, it's hot in the clubs. We need to be playing it. I didn't care about what the label was thinking and what they was wanting to do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And when I started doing that to the at the radio station, I was feeding them one after the other, and the song would blow up. Next thing I know, they created a position for me called music/mix show coordinator because there wasn't even a such thing at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Dope.
But I went to them again, other than telling them what we should be playing and it blowing up, going to them and saying, hey man, we got some of the best mixers and some of the best shows. We got the Wake Up Show at our station, but the DJs don't talk. You know what I mean? They just do their shows or turn in their shows and keep it moving. I'm like, man, we need to be talking. You know what I mean? So we'll know as DJs, and the station was like, oh, shoot, you're right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, well, do you want to keep them together? Yeah, I sure can. So now they gave me an office. Now I'm up at the station telling them, giving them suggestions on what to play and turning in sheets talking about these are the hottest songs that all the shows are playing right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then our station went number one. Never went number one before. It was always Power 106 in Los Angeles. That was number one. Always beat out 92.3 The Beat. Not when I was part of the team. We beat them out, took over the number one slot, and at that time there was a such thing as DJ conventions where they flew all the top DJs from around the country to Puerto Rico and wherever, you know what I mean, to a resort, and the labels came and they brought the artists to perform and they had us for the whole week type of thing. But they would have panels, you know what I mean, all the DJs, and they would have panelists. Well, because other stations were looking at our station and wondering what we were doing. How did they just beat out Power 106, right? Then once they started making phone calls. Oh, DJ Jam, blah, blah, blah. Who is this Jam? All of a sudden, I'm speaking on all around the country, in the U.S. and abroad, on panels on what is a mix show coordinator? What am I doing at 92.3 The Beat that's making a difference?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All of a sudden, after I did that, all of a sudden, mix show, all these stations have mix show coordinators now.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
Copy and paste.
It's real talk. Like, I don't want to sit here saying, "Oh, I did this," or I just keep it real. You know what I mean?
Right.
But so I've seen a lot of, influence and politics and all that, but I learned how to deal with it. I wasn't a yes man for nobody.
Right.
Kiss nobody's ass that came in from the record label. You know what I mean? I'm like, while we're in this office right now, this is business. Yeah. You know what I mean? Outside of this office, you can come to the club, we can kick back, we can have a drink, all you want. But I'm gonna keep it like this in here. You know what I mean? And they couldn't buy me either. You know what I mean? These labels, give a DJ real money. Hey,
right.
No, I'd be like, no, I don't like the record. You know what I mean? Hey, and I don't need your money. I'm with Snoop and Dre. I'm cool. You know what I mean? So at first they couldn't stand me because they couldn't buy me. But you know what they did? They knew that when they bought me a record, I said, "Oh man, I like this one." They knew I went to bat for them, and I went in on that record.
Okay.
And that turned into, wait a minute, we just got this artist, Young Jeezy, whoever, just did 30, 40 songs in the studio, and we're got to put his album together, you know what I mean, and pick songs off of it. So they'd have me up in the label listening to all these 30-something songs, right? And saying, this is a single. This is a single. Oh, that's a cool album cut. That's a cool album cut. This song right here shouldn't even be on here. You know what I mean? And I just kept it real.
Right.
And it helped them mold, you know what I mean? And I saw a lot of these albums flourish. I'm not going to sit up here and name all the albums, but I saw it from my own eyes. And I saw these certain songs end up on the album. And I certainly saw these certain songs being singles. And it worked.
That's what's up, man.
Yeah.
You got, man. I know you got mad stories to tell, man, all day long. So real quick, because we're gonna wrap it up or whatnot, because we're about almost 45 minutes in or whatever or whatnot, man. Because really, we could talk to you all day long or whatever. But as a DJ, man, before you step in the studio, how do you get in the mood? How do you get your mind right? And what sound are you looking for when you want to play a particular record?
That's how. Now, I just answer that.
Good answer. Good answer.
That's how it starts, and those creative juices start flowing. I'm just a creative person. My mind goes 24 hours a day. I stay up till 3, 4, something in the morning every night. And I have pieces of paper that I keep around me with notes. This is how I function, right? So as I'm creative and I have thoughts, I put it down on paper. And then some of them come to fruition and some of them don't. Okay. That's how I move.
Yeah, that's what's up, man.
Yeah.
So are there any particular projects in the works right now for you? When it's all said and done, man, when you walk away, what do you want people to remember you for? What message do you want to leave behind?
I would say consistency, longevity, and putting 150% into whatever you're doing and try to be the best. You know what I mean? I want people to know whatever I do is done in a good way. I'm not going to put any half-ass whatever out because the people, I don't come from that family. Dr. Dre is a perfectionist. You know what I mean? He doesn't believe in due dates. You know what I mean? At all. When he makes an album, it's done when he said it's done, not when the label says we need it by. And I have firsthand footage of me recording the people from the record label coming and sitting in the corner of the recording studio every day because he went over the due date. Jimmy Iovine. But I got it because I'm the only one that had a camcorder, so I'm recording everything. So I have him shitting bricks in the corner of the studios, you know what I mean? Because Dre went past the due date, doggy style.
Cool, man. So look, real quick, tell the people, man, where they can find you at, man, where they can listen to your mix shows and things like that.
You can find me on all socials at DJ Jam DPG.
Okay.
You can check out my website, djjam.com. And through those, man, you'll see everything that I'm doing from when I'm on the radio. There'll be a link right before I go live. There'll be links that's telling you when I'm going live and who I'm highlighting that night, and all that. You know, every Friday night I'm on the air in San Diego. Monday nights, late Monday nights, and Tuesdays. It's actually Tuesday nights in Australia. I'm on in Australia.
Nice.
And
Dope.
Friday nights when I'm on the iHeartRadio app.
Okay,
Right.
cool, man. Cool, man. Well, look, we can talk. I mean,
We'll have more sessions. We'll have more sessions.
Yeah. We
man. But we appreciate your time. Yo, the legendary DJ Jam, y'all. I mean,
DPG.
you know what I'm saying?